I'm assuming that we are live. First of all, I would like to apologize the fact that we are late. As you can see, I'm in a hotel room and I'm sorry for the internet network. I'm in India, so such things happen. But before I get into the topic of the day, I just want to make a small caveat, which is I don't want to make it sound, kind of demeaning, saying that hey, Indians make this mistakes and others don't. Uh, the only qualification that I have to make this assessment is based on the fact Indians, most of my life, taught Indians the GMAT. So whatever I'm going to say now, by the way, is not true only for verbal. This is true for GMAT as a whole, correct? So by the way, I'm just trying to figure out if we are live. So Abhijit, yeah, if you can just put on the chat that we are live so that I kind of, because there is also a lag that happens between um, so that's what I wanted to just mention as a ground rule. There will be a lag. I also have kind of YouTube open over here, so I kind of get to see your questions and I can see myself, so that's good, right? And we have a Q&A in the end. There is no Q&A. I think it's a chat window, so make sure you put it in the chat window. And if one person can hear, I can assume all of you can hear me. In case you do have an issue with your internet connection, please check that out. If there is an connection issue at my end, I'll make sure that I'll reconnect as soon as possible. Right? So just a little bit about me. I've been teaching the GMAT, as I told you. What is the have to come in front of you and give you this things that you possibly could be, you possibly could be going wrong at on the GMAT, right? So I've been teaching the GMAT for so I started teaching standardized test prep in 2001. So makes it about teaching GMAT alone about 16, 17 years. The GMAT, please, connect with me on LinkedIn. Interact with students on LinkedIn. In case you want to mail me, that's fine. And I think that's pretty much my background. I'm the founder of CrackVerbal, right? But more importantly, I think my bigger qualification to tell you these things is just the fact, thousands of students, the GMAT over, the last so many years. A couple of quick things. So we'll have 45 minutes. We already are about 10 minutes into it. I'm conscious of that. We keep a 15-minute Q&A towards the end, right? And if you're going to be posting something on the chat, it's going to be terribly tough for me to follow. So I would request for you to hold on to your questions. Maybe if you have a paper and a pen, write it down, and towards the end, I'll make answer as many of your questions as possible. A couple of things. So again, going back, why me? Why CrackVerbal? So these are some I've taught who went on to score high. Some of us are going to spend a lot of time on these slides. You can always check it up on our website. A couple of free resources just for people who are joining in today. We have an offer, so I'll be sending in this link. I'll ask Abhijit to actually send this link on the chat window. It's a course that I create to study for the GMAT, right? And that's also a good way to set the agenda for discussion today, which is a lot of people talk about the technicalities of the GMAT, right? This is parallelism. This is permutation combination. But I think if you ask me, most students struggle studying for the GMAT, right? So first of all, sit here, in this webinar on a nice Friday evening when you could be partying. So what I've done in this course is I've kind of distilled what are the kind of motivation factors, what are the things that tend to distract students when they study for the GMAT, what is the ideal way for you to study. So it's an entire course. It has like dozens of videos on how to study for the GMAT. So this particular link, I'll be sending it to you on the chat window. So just give me another couple of minutes and on the chat window, right? Is there a lot of interference in the sense, are you clearly or because I heard that you because okay. So let me just check. I think I got. I'm just checking my speed just to make sure that we are kind of set on this. Sorry about this. It's kind of the internet connection. I'm in a hotel, but that's so if it's better now, okay, we'll just try to manage, and I'll try to repeat if there are certain things. But there is also another problem because of the lag. I get to know your feedback a little later. Correct. So let's just try to see. I have a YouTube channel, so maybe you can go to the CrackVerbal YouTube channel and have a look. Again, these are some more free resources you can get when you go to the CrackVerbal website. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you. So I just want if Abhijit, if you can just type in, should I continue? Should I do something? Just let me know. But at this point, I'm just going to continue with whatever I have to say. Right. As I was saying, the whole idea is the way we prepare for the GMAT. I think it's important that when we are caught up in solving these questions from the OG, taking these GMAT prep tests, going to GMAT club, and looking at all these explanations, to kind of maybe take a step back, pause, and look at the way we are approaching studying for the GMAT. Right? How do we really approach studying for the GMAT? And what I've done for today's session is I've created a top 10, right, of mistakes. And as I said, I qualified my answer. This is because it's typically, Indian students that I deal with. That's why I kind of termed it as, the mistake that Indians make. The first mistake that I think Indians make, or not Indians, let me just try to, make it generic, is GMAT is not a test of skill alone. I have students come to me and they say, it's like a bag of tricks, right? It's like a bunch of rules that I can mug up. So the question that I have for you is, how many formulas do you have in math, right? Think about it. 100, 200? And let's assume that on the day of the test, you were to take these formulas into the test center. Let's assume, right, hypothetically, that it's allowed. Would you be able to score a 51? Probably not, right? Because that in quant, your problem is not knowing the formula. What happens, unfortunately, is in verbal, people tend to assume that maybe it is about the formula. Maybe it is about some rule in sentence correction that I don't know. Maybe it is some critical reasoning trick that I need to know, which will help me solve the toughest of CR problems, or some magic method in reading comprehension, which is going to get me to understand the crux in under 90 seconds and answer all the questions. Here is the truth. It's not going to happen, right? It's not a test of skill alone. You have to understand that GMAT also requires certain, what I would call as intelligence, right? And it's going to be impossible for you to score beyond a point on the GMAT if you're going to be relying completely on rules, right? So I want you to understand it's a test of intelligence. GMAT is a test that is required by Harvard Business School, correct? So Harvard Business School is not going to reward you for knowing a formula, correct? It's not going to reward you for mugging up more things than the guy next to you, correct? So I think, you need to stop looking at it purely from that perspective, right? So you're not going to get an 800 stuff, right? Mistake number two, and mistake number two is kind of a corollary to correct. And the mistake two is it's not a test of intelligence alone, correct? For example, if I were to tell you that in a room of 100 smart people, how many would be able to solve a really tough 800 level GMAT question? Maybe 5, maybe 10, correct? But in the same room, if I had 100 monkeys, right, theoretically 20 monkeys would actually pick the right answer choice, correct? So the point is, it's also a balance of skill, right? And the one skill that I usually tell students to develop is to start thinking like the GMAT test setter. That's a very, very key point, okay? Think like the GMAT test setter. Think, what could the GMAT test setter do to confuse me over here? What would it be at play? This is a sentence correction question, right? I see that there is a parallel structure, but then everybody else at a 600 level is going to see the parallel structure. What is it that GMAT is expecting me to know more or do more, correct? And that's where your skills come into play. And it's a fact that if you were to practice quant, if you practice verbal, you practice it for long enough, you are going to also become a lot faster. I don't know if you have noticed it, but in quant, if you actually give yourself like a week, 10 days, and don't like really solve any question, and then solve a question straight off like 2 weeks later, do you notice you get kind of rusty, right? You get a little slow, right? So that is an example of how GMAT is actually a test of skills as well. So it's kind of a mix of both intelligence and skill, right? So that's what I want you to leave you with. The second mistake. The third mistake, people tend to misestimate the importance of time, correct? The point is, GMAT is not testing whether you can get to the right answer choice, correct? That's the wrong answer, wrong question to ask, right? And here is what happens, right? If you, while solving a question, especially while taking the GMAT, if you ask your brain the wrong question, right? If you were to ask your brain, hey, can I solve this question? You're going to say, well, I got a billion neurons, right? I mean, sure, I can solve this. But then the right question to ask your brain is, can I solve this in under 2 minutes? And that's when you realize that your brain kind of gets a little honest with you, and it's going to, kind of pat you and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you should let this one go, correct? So I think, one food for thought that I have for you is, you would rather get a wrong in 30 seconds than get it right in 5 minutes. Think about it, right? I'd rather get a question wrong in 30 seconds. By the way, you can't really get it wrong, right? I mean, what I mean is you have a 1 by 5 chance of getting it right. So you rather get a question wrong and, rather than getting it right in 5 minutes. The reason is, when you spend 5 minutes on a question, right, what happens is, after a point, there is the law of diminishing returns that kicks in. Have you heard of this? The law of diminishing returns? This is the law with, like, your probability of getting that question right at the end of 2 minutes is, let's say, 70%. At the end of 3 minutes is going to be 80%. But at the end of 4 minutes is going to be 82%, 83%. It's not going to go up. So it's up to you to figure out that particular point, and that's something, it's a skill, right? So that's something that you need to develop, which is, when you look at a question, are you able to make a judgment call, correct, of how much time should I invest for this question? And anyone who's been practicing, anyone who's taken the test, anybody who's taken even a practice test knows this is ridiculously hard, correct? Because what happens is, there are a lot of cognitive biases that kicks in, correct? Biases that kind of hold us back, right? But I'm going to talk a little bit about those biases a little later, but I just wanted you to kind of think about this. Time is critical on the GMAT. It's not about whether you get that right or wrong. Okay, it's not about you getting to the right answer choice. It is you getting to the right answer choice under time limit, right? That's the more important thing. Mistake number 4. Okay, making educated guess. Now, what happens is, as I said, at the cost of sounding like a shrink, right? You need to develop an ability to let go, right? What happens is, right from school time, the virtue was always knowing stuff. Think about it. In India, we have this thing called Vivavos, right? We have a Viva where you're supposed to go in front of the teacher and they ask you questions. And I remember when I was in college, if I could say, like, can I guess? And the teacher will, how can you guess? You cannot guess. You either know it or you don't. So we kind of live in this binary world where it's either we know it or we don't. Either it's right or it's wrong. It's yes or no. It's zero or black, white, black or white, 0 or 1. Correct? But what happens on the GMAT is, you need to, develop this ability to say, you know what, if I'm 80% sure, I'm good enough. In fact, here is a food for thought for you. Okay, I want you to think about it. Right, if I'm 100% sure on every answer choice, I'm probably taking too much time. Right, going back to mistake number 3. So I would be okay getting it to about 80-90% sure, but never 100% sure. Because see, unless and until it is length is equal to 5, breadth is equal to 4, what is the area of a rectangle? Unless and until you get a question like that, um, or some question that you've already seen before, which is not going to happen on the GMAT. Unless and until that happens, there will always be a sense of doubt, a niggling doubt on the GMAT. And anybody who's taken the test can probably attest to this, that you will never be sure, but you have to learn that at some point you just need to mark an answer and move on, and develop this ability early on. Okay, so develop this ability while you are taking the practice tests. Correct. I think practice tests are a great way for you to figure out this whole pacing strategy, for you to figure out plan yourself. Correct. So make sure that you take tests. In fact, I would say even with the OG, you might want to just go ahead and take a bunch of questions and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself let's say 20 minutes, right? And I'm going to be solving these 10 questions, right? Now, when you solve these 10 questions in 20 minutes, here is what I want you to do. Every time that you're like a little iffy, if you're making an educated guess, you're not very sure, just go ahead, put an asterisk, just put a small star, okay? And say, you know what, I'm going to come back to you, right? Once you're done with 20 minutes, once you're done with 10 questions, stop the clock. Don't worry about the time. Take as much time as you want. Try to go back to the questions where you put an asterisk and ask yourself, would I change my answer option? Here is something very funny that you will perhaps realize, that 8 out of 10 cases, you probably don't want to change your answer choice, right? Love that extra time just to give us comfort, just to make us feel good. So just be careful that that extra time is cutting into your your overall performance, right? What's mistake number 5? Mistake number 5 is we have a brute force approach, right? So what happens in brute force approach is we tend to solve as many questions as possible without really looking at the quality of questions, or analyzing whether I need to look at a better source, whether I need to, So the point is, if you're just going to be focusing on solving questions without understanding, at a very deep level, where you are going wrong, what should you do differently, what should be the course correction. Trust me, there are people who have scored 760 by solving only 100 questions, correct? So you don't need to go running up. I've seen students who just go berserk, right? They take multiple courses, they solve multiple books, multiple websites, multiple sources, multiple PDFs, and guess what? GMAT Club is a source of distraction, right? It's a great source if you know how to use it well, but if you're going to just go solving questions, it's not going to help. The way I look at it is, think about it this way. If, let's say, a batsman, right? Since, we are talking about the Indian context, let's assume that a batsman is getting out on a particular ball, on a particular delivery, correct? Now, the thing is, he's not just going to be going to net practice and, just asking the bowler to bowl any kind of ball, right? He's going to say, what, I want you to pitch it short, correct? Because I want to work on my technique. Because if you don't get your technique right, you actually will end up being in a worse situation if you solve more questions. And this is why. The more questions you solve with the flawed technique will make you better at being bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're already bad. You're stuck at a 600. But now you're solving a gazillion questions. So now you're like a master at getting 600, right? You just can't break through that barrier because your underlying technique has been reinforced by solving a lot of questions. So please don't focus on just solving questions. Focus on your technique, focus on your strategy. Mistake number 6 is a mistake where, I've had a lot of students who come to me and say, Arun, my accuracy on the GMAT sentence correction, is 60%, right? What should I do? I have no idea, right? See, it's like this, right? You can't say what is the average beauty of your country, and you say, oh, you know what? Let's look at all the Miss Indias, and let's look at all the people who went on to win Miss Universe, not take an average. You'll say it's absurd, right? So the same thing, you cannot measure your accuracy because there is one more metric that is missing. And that metric happens to be the difficulty of the question. Correct? So what happens is students, when they look at a question, and it usually happens on the OG, if you have taught the OG, it actually is graded from easy to hard. Correct? So students, initially, they do well on the OG because they say, hey, you know what, I got the first 20 questions right. I'm fantastic, right? And then towards the end, if you take the last 20 questions for SC, 20 questions for PS, DS, CR, RC, take anyone, right? It's going to be the toughest. And then they say, my accuracy is going down. Well, your accuracy is not going down. Maybe you're even improving. But you cannot take accuracy. It's like, if you have heard of this term weighted average, right? So it's not an average, it's a weighted average. You can't just take questions and just say, you know, my accuracy on this question, right? So that's one. The second thing is, why accuracy can be a little misleading is if there are two students, let's assume there are two students who come to me, both of them have solved 100 questions and they end up getting 60% of it right. Okay, but the first student went back and he solved every question again. He analyzed it thoroughly. Correct. So, for example, if he's spending X minute solving a question in sentence correction, for example, you have to spend 5x in analyzing it. I'll tell you why. X minutes because you're solving it in 90 seconds. 5x, 10 minutes because each answer choice, each incorrect answer choice is telling you a way in which GMAT can set a trap for you, right? Each of those answer choices is you're learning something from it. You probably need to be telling yourself that I'm not going to, let this error come again, correct? So if the second student were to just go ahead and take the next set of questions without analyzing, if I were to place my bet, who do you think I'll place my bet on? The first student or the second student? Both of them have a 50% accuracy on whatever questions they solved. You guessed it, I would place my bet on the first guy. Why? Because accuracy told me where he was in the past. It does not tell me where he is today, because he is already moved if he has analyzed this question properly. Make sense? Right? By the way, go ahead and let me know in the chat window if whatever I'm saying is resonating with you, if there is anything that you want me to kind of, if the voice you're able to hear clearly and so on, right? And I'll be getting to specific questions. I see someone asking me specific questions on RC. I'll be getting to that in just a bit, okay? We have 3 more mistakes to go, right? I've kind of gone through it, and then we're going to get on to the Q&A. So, this is the other thing. Tough questions don't come with a red beacon on top. This is not a mantri or an MLA or a politician who's going announcing to everyone that, look, I'm tough. You need to invest more time in me. In fact, I would challenge you, go back and look at all the questions that you got wrong. Many of these questions will actually look deceptively easy, right? It'll look as if, the right answer choice will just jump at you, correct? And, the whole idea is you realize that the reason why, tough questions are tough is because, GMAT makes it tough in a particular way, correct? So I'll just tell you, again, I'm going to go back to what I said, which is, GMAT. By the way, I would be answering your questions. I see some people answering. Please don't answer. That's not 10 minutes is not my answer. In fact, 10 minutes is terrible. Okay, like a worst time. I'll tell you why 10 minutes on RC is terrible. Okay, but I'm going to get there in about 6 to 7 minutes. Okay, just hold on. So remember that when you say that I fell into a trap, you did. It was a trap that was planned for you. GMAT planned that trap. GMAT knew that you would fall into that trap. Correct? That's what makes a tough question tough. And what I realize is that students don't really practice with really tough questions. Many of the so-called tough questions out there are from sources And here is the thing, right? You have to understand that there is a type of question. I've seen a lot of questions, especially in quant. I would call them tedious stuff, right? They are tediously tough. It just takes you more time. It will take you 3 minutes to solve. It'll have 5 steps to it. But on GMAT, it's very elegantly tough. There will be one value in data sufficiency that you missed out, correct? And that will make your entire answer option wrong. Or in sentence correction, there will be this one minor preposition that will kind of change its place and the entire question will change. So these are the things that actually are the hallmark of a truly great question. A really tough GMAT question, this is how it will make you feel. It will make you feel, you know what, I could have got it. You will never say, oh, wow, that's tough. You'll say, you know what, I could have got it. In Hindi, there is, thoda hai, thodi ki zarurat hai. You'll always feel there is this little bit that you could have done to get that answer. And that's what, makes a GMAT question tough. It is not because it has like 50 steps to it. Okay. Mistake number 8 is, building your mental stamina, correct? You have to understand that GMAT is not is not you solving an individual question. It is you figuring out how you're going to be planning out your 31 questions in quant and your 36 questions in verbal, correct? So the 62 minutes and the 65 minutes that you have, how do you plan that, correct? And it's going to be a marathon, because remember, you also have a deal with, correct? You also have other small things, for example, going to the test center, correct? So going to the test center, trust me, the whole experience can actually drain your mental energy. And this is something that you probably can Google. The course that I was talking about talks a lot about this. It's called mental energy, correct? So there is a thing called decision fatigue. So you can maybe Google for it. Decision fatigue, right? It's true. If you want to start your test, make sure that you are building enough mental stamina. I've seen a lot of students do well on individual questions. If I were to give this guy a CR question in isolation, brilliant. He solves a question. He is able to eliminate the answer options. He's able to get down to the right answer choice. But he is not able to perform on the day of the test. Correct? So very crucial that you build the stamina for the test day. Correct? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Mistake number 9. Diligent practice rather than relying on weekends. So here is a quote for you. Most diets are given up while reading the desert menu. Do you agree? Right? Similarly, most GMAT plans are given up when we have an extra tough day at work. So what happens is, this whole GMAT preparation ends up stretching out, because what you're doing is you're relying on weekends, and then you have all of these things that kind of get into your way, which just makes preparing for the GMAT long drawn affair, right? Here is the deal: you need to put in 2 to 3 months, right? And you need to be consistent for these 2 to 3 months. Going back, this is where the course that I told you about hopefully helps you. Okay, so I'll just make sure that I'll just get that new. Just one second, please. Okay, so sorry about that. So I was just asking someone to send the link to Abhijit. So in that course, that's what I was talking about. So the thing that I say is, it's like a root canal operation, right? GMAT, you want to do it once, you want to do it right, and you want to get it out of the way, correct? So first, figure out you're a morning person or you're an evening person. If you're an early morning person, wake up before the day. If you're a late person, take a shower, come back, sit at home, relax, like right now, 8 o'clock, sit down and study. Work according to your schedule. Don't try to make a plan that is not going to work, right? And for heaven's sake, please Stop using your phone, using the internet. Again, in the course, I talk about this, but that, according to me, is the biggest problem today. Studying for the GMAT in 2010, trust me, was a lot easier. Okay, you did not have WhatsApp, you did not have Netflix, you did not have gratification that is flowing through your phone, that is flowing through your TV, correct? So you need to make sure that you are focused for those few hours every day, and make it diligent, and don't rely on the weekends to kind of push you. People who take the GMAT and do well are people who love the test because they see it as a challenge. They see it as a as something that they love, correct? So one thing that I say is love the GMAT. Okay, make sure that you don't love the GMAT will not love you back. Okay, I want you to think about it. If you don't love the GMAT will not love you back. I have not heard a single person scoring high on the GMAT ever tell me that he hated the test. Correct? So you have to love the test. You have to take it as a challenge, and that's what is going to keep your motivation, right? Last one, mistake number 10 is learning from the wrong stuff, right? What happens is there is just way too much information, way too many material. And what happens because of that, students tend to get overwhelmed, correct? I want to give you a data point. GMAT, that is the creator of the GMAT, okay? I know this for a fact because way back in 2007, there was a, there was a lawsuit, and GMAT claims, and again, it's a claim, that they spend $2,000 on a single question. I want you to. So what happens is they not only create the question according to very exacting standards, okay, to have a variety of different mechanisms to make sure that it's culturally neutral. So they actually make sure that people from India are not at a disadvantage than someone in the US. For example, there is a particular passage comprehension. It's called, I forgot, Winters versus the State. Okay, it's about this Native Indian reservation. Okay, and about a US Supreme Court ruling on that. That passage, and I know this because the people from GMAT told me, okay, will never appear on the GMAT. This is a passage from, I don't know, 20 years ago when GMAT was typically taken only by Americans, correct? So today, GMAT is putting in a lot of effort to make the test standardized. Really learning is you're learning how to crack the GMAT. You're not here to learn English. You're not here to learn math. Remember that. You're here to score as high as possible on the GMAT. And for that, it's crucial that you learn only from official sources as much as possible. Tons of threads where almost every official question has been discussed. In case you're not clear on any, you can ping me on GMAT Club. My ID is Arun@CrackVerbal. So please ping me if there is any thread where you would like me to respond. All right. So that's kind of a wrap. I kind of got it just in time. So what we will do is let's do now. So I'm going to start. Okay, so I have this question on reading comprehension, right? So here is the deal. We have 4 passages. Let us assume that we were to take 10 minutes per passage. How many minutes do you have? 40 minutes. How many minutes total for verbal? 65 minutes are you left with? 25 minutes. How many RC questions have you solved? Just 14, correct? So you just solved 14 questions out of 36, correct? That means you still have 22 questions to go. And how many minutes? 25 minutes. And this includes your boldface. This includes your multiple, multi-line, completely underlined modifier question and sentence correction, right? So there is no way you will be able to solve it if you're going to be spending 10 minutes on RC. My thumb rule, 7 to 8 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes for reading the passage and about 5 minutes to answer the questions. And this is something that we actually teach in the CrackVerbal course, that it's important for you to understand that when they say reading comprehension, the word reading, there are different types of reading, correct? One type of reading is what I call as skimming, okay? The other type of reading is called scanning. What is skimming? You take a newspaper in the morning, you just read through it. What you're doing, you're skimming, correct? But when you go to a classifieds, when you want to kind of look at the telephone directory, what you're doing, you're scanning. On the GMAT, what are you expected to do? You are expected to do both, skimming and scanning. First, skimming, then scanning. A lot of times what happens is students have this pressure to understand the whole passage before they answer the questions. It's ridiculous, because you're not going to be scored for understanding the passage. You're going to be scored for one thing alone, which is answering the questions correctly, which is why our technique focuses on how to skim quickly in 2 minutes and then spend a good 5 to 6 minutes in scanning, so that you don't make mistakes while answering the questions, right? So that was my answer to the reading comprehension question. Um, Vocabulary is not tested. All the vocabulary required for the GMAT is contextual vocabulary, right? What do you mean by contextual vocabulary? Let me give you an example. Okay, if I were to say the most stellar companies in the world have high profit margins. Now, you don't know the meaning of the word stellar, correct? But you know that they have high profit margins. So you kind of figure out that it's something that is positive. So I think in reading comprehension, more than knowing the meaning of the word, I think it's important to know the tonality of the word. I'll give you an example. Let us say that one of the things says a particular site, a particular author cited by the source, right, says, admittedly. Now, what is the meaning of the word admit? Do you admit things that you're right, or do you admit things that you're wrong? Correct? So the word admit, it's a small 5-letter word. All of us know the meaning of the word. But when it gets tested on the GMAT, that same word can actually have a huge implication on your understanding of the passage, your processing of the tonality. So rather than worrying about the vocabulary, I would say worry more about understanding specific tonality. I'm just trying to go through it. What other sources to prepare apart from official guide? So I'm just talking about questions, okay? If you were to ask me to recommend, I would strongly recommend the CrackVerbal course for very obvious reasons, right? So please go ahead and check out crackverbal.com/online, just /GMAT/online, or you can just type in CrackVerbal GMAT online. We also have a free trial course. But more importantly, when it comes to questions, here are some of the sources that you can look at. OG, Verbal Review, Quant Review. There is GMAT official question set that is available on mba.com. And here is one source nobody talks about, but is a super useful source. These are retired GMAT prep questions, correct? Or not retired GMAT prep questions, or GMAT questions, which you find in the mba.com website tests. So if you say exam pack 1, exam pack 2, the free GMAT pack, all of the 6 tests, correct? If you actually go to GMAT Club, you will see that there are threads devoted to these questions. According to me, these are the precious hidden gems that people don't focus on. If I were you, once I'm done with OG, Verbal Review, Quant Review, and perhaps that, I would directly jump to retired GMAT questions that are found on Exam Pack, GMAT Pack. The only flip side to it is, if you are taking a test, you might see repeats. So my suggestion is to take the tests, the practice test, which is Exam Pack 1 and 2, while you're solving OG and Verbal Review. So you have these questions as a way to kind of build your stamina till the day of the test. At CrackVerbal, we provide our students with a question bank of these retired questions. What is the biggest of the top mistakes to be taken care of in general? Of the 10 things that I said, what would be the biggest? What would be the most big? I think, what I said, which is GMAT, you have to build a momentum. correct? You have to love the test to build that momentum, right? So you need to kind of take it as a challenge, right? That you're solving every day. So every day morning, wake up and say, I love GMAT. Okay, I know it sounds hard. Okay, I know it sounds crazy, but do that. Start falling in love with GMAT, and you will see that GMAT will love you back. And how does it love you back? It loves you back with great scores, right? Um, Here is the deal. I just got this question, few tips and tricks to crack GMAT. That's precisely my point. That's precisely my point. GMAT kept expecting that in 1 hour, I somehow teach you this magic trick by which you're going to score a 760. Trust me, I would not be sitting here giving you free advice. No, jokes apart, right? I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years of my life. Okay. I know the people at GMAT. I know this test like the back of my hand, but I can't really give you a map, right? It's a map that you need to discover. And students who score well, they tend to internalize problems. People who score low, they externalize the problem. That to you. When they make a mistake, people who score well, they tend to look at it and say, what is it that I could have done differently over here? What is it that could have changed, the way I approach this question? What is it that I can learn from this question that I can apply on to the next question? But people who score low and people who are not able to find success with GMAT, they tend to externalize. They think the answer lies on GMAT Club. They think the answer lies with, so-and-so test prep company. It lies with Arun Jagannathan. It does not lie with anyone else. It lies with you, correct? I know, okay, so here's an interesting story. I met someone, he's not my student, okay? I met someone, he took the GMAT diagnostic test, he scored a 760. He scored a 50-42, okay? He prepared for like maybe, so he's got a 51-40 something. He prepared for 2 weeks, okay? 2 weeks. He scored a quant 50, verbal 50. He scored a 780. I don't know why it's not a 790, but it's a 780. Quant 50, verbal 50, correct? Now, the point is, there are people like that. So that just tells you that GMAT is something that, you really don't need to prepare for. It's all within you, correct? So as long as you can have internalized, I think, it's going to be a lot easier. What are the ways to work on the basics of quant? Akshat, I'll just answer Akshat's question. There is exam pack 1, exam pack 2. There is this GMAT pack, which is your starter pack. So all this put together gives you 6 tests. 6 tests multiplied by 2, because you can take each test 2 times. I'll tell you why you can take it 2 times. Let's say at the starting of your preparation, you took the test and you scored a 550. Okay. Now, when you scored a 550, you realize that you saw a sequence of questions. It's an adaptive algorithm. I hope you know this. It's not a linear scale. It's an adaptive algorithm. Now, let's say a month or 2 months later, with a little bit more prep, you get better at it. Now, what is going to happen is the same test, if you were to retake, the questions that you got wrong initially, chances are you're going to get them right. And if you get those questions right, guess what will happen? The subsequent questions that you're going to see, they are going, which means you will see a new set of questions. So my take would be, you have 6 questions, you can take it twice, so that makes it 12 tests. That should be the, like the perfect formula for full-length tests. As far as practice tests, plenty of resources. GMAT Club gives you, these sectional tests, practice tests. So please make use of those as well. While working on CR and writing small hints is taking 1 minute, going through the option is 1.5, overall 3 minutes. Okay, Vijay, critical reasoning, do not read fast. Okay, terrible. Don't do that. See, the thing with critical reasoning is you have to read it like a quant problem. See, when quant problem says Jane goes at 5 kilometers per hour, John goes at 8 kilometers per hour, John reaches 2 minutes before Jane. How do you do that? You write it down, right? Jane goes at 5 kilometers, John goes at 8. That's the same thing with CR. You have to spend time processing the stimulus. Okay, I have something for you. A tough CR question, a really tough CR question is going to take me 3 minutes, correct? So it's just the nature of the game. You just need to appreciate what a tough CR question does to you. Correct? So it is going to take you time to process the stimulus. And here is one more tip. Don't jump to the answer choices in CR if you have not understood the stimulus. If you have not understood the stimulus, chances are you're going to waste more time in the answer options. Correct? So take that 1.5 minutes. Don't speed read. There is really no solution for it. I wish I had a better answer, but that's really the way it is. Sometimes when you're fighting a battle, it's good to know what are the things that the enemy has, right? So GMAT is your enemy in some sense, right? It's your friend, but it's also your enemy. So learn that, CR is one of those things that, in fact, if you look at your ESR, if you look at your GMAT, test performance, you will see that more than SC, more than RC, you're going to be spending time on CR. Going back to my earlier point, which is precisely why you should not be spending more time on RC. What is happening over here is people spend too much time on RC and they try to kind of compensate for it in sentence correction and critical reasoning. Can you compensate for it in sentence correction? Perhaps, maybe. Can you compensate for it in CR? No. Okay. There's no way you're going to be able to compensate for time. CR is going to take time. Okay, I'm just trying to go through some more questions. Okay. Okay, I see a lot of chats. I'm just trying to work through. Okay, so I'm just answering this question that Swam Avasthi has asked. How would you reconcile the perspective of the answer choices in RC and CR to the context of the questions, as this takes up most of the time? Okay, so I want you to think about it this way. Okay, how fast do you get to seeing the answer options? Correct? That's a very good way to kind of understand this. Correct? How long would it take for you before you see the first answer option in reading comprehension? Think about it. Reading comprehension. So you have the whole passage. You have to read the passage, you have to map it, then you get to the question, which means roughly 2.5 minutes before you see the first answer option. What about critical reasoning? When do you see the first answer option? You see it in approximately a minute, because that's what it's going to take for you to read the stimulus. But what about sentence correction? Zero. Because the moment you're reading the first sentence, that itself is answer option A. Correct? So you also need to remember that, looking at the answer options, correct, also plays a role. Correct? Because in sentence correction, it's a lot easier because there is no time, quote unquote, wasted in knowing a background before you get to the answer options. In CR, you may take about a minute before you get to the answer options. But in RC, you will need about 2.5 minutes before you get to see the answer options. Okay, I want you to think about it. It's a nice thought to have while you're solving questions, especially when you want to make a guess. So this changes your guessing strategy for SC, CR, and RC. Would I ever guess on SC? Probably not. I mean, I can always, between two answer options, I can just say, go ahead and pick one. But I would still read the sentence. I would never leave out a sentence. When it comes to CR, I would still read the stimulus. Okay, I would read the stimulus. If I did not understand the stimulus, I might end up going and making an educated guess. Correct? Possible. But I still would read the stimulus. Reading comprehension, I still have to read the whole passage. But among the 3 or 4 questions that are given to you, here is one strategy I would do. If I have less time, rather than cutting 30 seconds off each question, I would sacrifice one question. You need to pick which question. If I were you, I would probably not pick a question which is an anchor phrase question. According to the author, and so, what does it mean? You just need to go back to the passage and read it. A main idea question, if you have read the passage, you probably know what it is. The one that I would guess? The one that reads, which of the following predictive statements is the author most likely to agree with. Okay, one of those inference questions which you need to, for every answer options, you need to go back and read it, right? So those are the questions that I would probably blindly guess, correct, in order to save time. So I think we are kind of at the end of 7:30. So I just want to make sure that is like, there is a lot of questions that I probably have not answered. And also, if you understand the nature of what we have, which is like a forum of a webinar, right, it might have not been possible for me to answer all the questions. But what I would like you to do is, you can always write to us. You can just go to our website, and I'm just going to go back to the earlier link that I had for you. So yeah, so you can just go ahead and let me just try to see if I can copy paste this. Let me, great. Excellent. So I'm able to copy paste this, but I'm just trying to figure out how to paste it. So yeah, so just go to the CrackVerbal website, and on the website you should be able to pretty much get all of the resources. Please reach out to us if you have anything, and we would be glad to take it up. And just give me a second. I will just try to post the link over here. Yeah, I got the link. So let me just copy the link, and let me, I need to post the link. Just give me a second. I'm just going to post the link so that you get the link with you.
I done that, Arun. I just done that.
Cool, excellent. So that's all I had. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope it was useful. And as always, please get in touch with us if you have any questions. Thank you very much.